Hello and welcome to Raw Podcast with myself, Kugan Cassius. This week, delighted to be joined by my father. Do you know what, Mike? It dawns on me every now and again that we haven't actually sat down. Every time I've interviewed you, it's because there's been a problem or someone's moaned about the ring and we want your response to this. But it's good to sit down and kind of get a little bit of a backstory to... I know you've spoken about it on another podcast before, but it's good to get to know someone that everyone in the boxing world is very familiar with in yourself.
Yeah, it's been a long journey, I suppose. We've been in it since 1979. I started the company off in 1988. I was doing local boxing before then, in my hometown, we started in 88, and as I say, it was with Frank Warren first of all, and then Barry after that, about 3 months later, and then everybody else came to me. So, we've had 36 years at doing all the TV stuff for all the big promoters, which has been fantastic.
Right, let me ask you a question that I've wanted to know for a while. Do you know when you're at school, right, and there's always like, it might be a bit cliche now, I don't know if they ask this at school, but it's always that question when you're a young child at school, what do you want to be when you grow up, right? So for me, I wanted to work in a petrol station because my uncle did, right? My uncle worked in a petrol station in Walthamstow, and I wanted to go and work there. Not for any particular reason. I did one day there and never did it again. But what did you want to do when you was a child? Because I'm assuming you didn't want to do this. This wasn't in your kind of thought process at that point.
No, it wasn't. I've been introduced to boxing at a very young age indeed, when I was most probably 3 or 4 and living in London. My father got up to listen to Rocky Marciano one night, and I went downstairs with him. I mean, this is the early 50s, and we're talking about tuning it in on the cat's whisker on the on the wireless, and listening at 1 o'clock in the morning to Don Cockle fighting, or Rocky Marciano. It might have been the pair of them. It might have been when he fought him. But there you go. That was the start. That was my first introduction to boxing. But when I was in school, I wanted to go farming. And I worked on a farm when I was at school. And when I left school, I went farming. And I went to agricultural college, and I learnt a trade. And when I came away from there, from college, I met a girl there who lived in the Midlands. And I moved up to where she lived and was farming. And I did 4 or 5 years at that. And then I became an agricultural rep, selling to farmers and what have you. And then, turn of fate, I was offered a greengrocery stall in a market, and I did 25 years as a greengrocer.
So let's go back to farming for a second. So what specifically about farming, or why was it that was your kind of, you thought that was your path, or was your path, not thought, it was your path back then, you said in the 50s. Why farming?
I lived out in the country. I lived in Hastings, so we moved down to Hastings. My father's firm reallocated to Hastings, and we moved down there. And we were on the outskirts of Hastings, and there was a farm up the road, and one of the kids I went to school with, he was into farming and worked on a farm, and it was just something that appealed to me as well. And I said, I fancy that, and I went and got a job on a local farm, and I was there 6 o'clock in the morning milking cows, and then after go to school, then when you come back from school, you went back and helped haymaking or doing whatever, and it was just something that was it, and I thought that was a career to be in, but unfortunately, it's not a very wealthy trade unless you own a farm. To work in it is very hard work, long hours, and there's not that much reward there. And as someone said to me, it's all right having £30 notes in your pocket, but do you want dirty boots doing it? So, that seemed fair enough. So when I had the opportunity of doing something else, then I did. And fortunately, it led me into boxing. because I eventually, as I said, was a greengrocer in a market, and the guy who owned the market I became very pally with. We used to go out drinking Saturday nights and what have you, or out for a meal in the week with the wives, and he was very keen on boxing and introduced me into boxing, which I did as a kid at school when I was 11, 12. I was a naughty boy at school, fighting in the playground, and the sports master, instead of giving me the slipper, corporal punishment days, he said, Friday lunchtime, I want you in the boxing. He said, I want you in the gym. He said, we got the school championships. If you want to fight, you can fight in there. So I put me in the ring, and that was it. I had about 15 fights, I suppose. Nose bled like hell, and in the right state. So I found out from a very early age, it bloody hurts. So that one for me.
So give me a rough time scale of when this was then. So when you were doing the farming, so this was in the 50s?
In the 60s.
In the 60s. So how old was you at that point of doing farming?
When I started going on the farms, I was about 12, so that would have been about 1960. So I was born 48, same as Barry. I mean, exactly the same age as Barry, well, 3 months older than Barry. So, but he's had the luxury life of making a lot of money, and I've had the hard working life of not making money until we came out here.
So you went from there, become a greengrocer. So what was you doing? Was you selling fruit and veg? Yes.
Selling fruit and veg, yeah. You know, it was something I bought a little market stall that was turning over a very small turnover indeed. I mean, we're looking at 1971, and if you took 200 quid a week then and made 40 quid, it was a lot of money, because I was in a job where I was earning 16 and a half quid a week. And the first week we did the books and what have you, and worked out, I made 40 quid, and Christ, you're a king. You know, it's like being on 400 quid a week now and then having a grand a week. Yeah. It's suddenly, boom, it just, you know, that was it. And within 2 years of taking the business on, from it was turning over £10,000 a year, 200 quid a week, I got it up to £250,000. And it just, you know, I've just worked hard. It's always been my ethic, because I learnt farming, and you've got to work hard on the farm. I've always worked hard, and I worked hard at that. Before I know it was just me to start off with. My wife then come and work for me about a month later, and then before we know where we are, we've got 10, 12 people working for me, and I finished up with doing about 7 or 8 markets and farm shops and goodness knows what, and end up with 50, 60 people working for you, you know, over the course of a week. Some of them only 1 day a week. But it was hard work that did that, and exactly the same in boxing. As you know, I've always worked bloody hard in boxing and worked all the hours that God sends. But my father always said to me when I was a kid, he said, listen, Mick, no one ever comes along and puts £1 million quid in your hand and says you ain't got to work. He says, you've got to work for every penny you get. He said, and if you get the opportunity of earning a shilling, take it. He said, because if you don't, someone else will. And he was 100% right. At the time I thought, you silly old fool, as we all did with our dads. They thought, what an idiot. By Christ, was he right? And I'll try and install it in my son and in my grandkids now. And they look at me and they're thinking exactly the same as I did when I was a kid. You silly old fool, what do you know about it? But they'll realise one day, hard work always pays.
I tend to agree with that. What was your greengrocers called, Mike?
No, it was just Mike Goodall.
Yeah.
That was what we traded as, yeah. Yeah. Turn that off. It's all right.
Do you need to answer that? You can.
It's all right. It's my grandson.
Oh.
He's running the business back in Evesham at the moment.
All right. So that was that phase of your life in greengrocery. So when was the switch to kind of what you're doing now? When did that happen? What period of time was that?
1988. Bob Paget, who worked for Frank Warren, rang me up. We were doing little dinner shows in the town I lived in. The guy who owned the market and myself and 6 other businessmen in the town who were into boxing. We formed a committee and started we had a dinner club, well, the old dinner shows, and Used to get about 350 people coming along, 4 or 5 times a year. And the first one we did, we had a matchmaker come down from Birmingham and he arranged everything and what have you. And the first one we had there was an MC there, and I said, did we pay him? And I said, yeah. I said, well, I'll do that in future. So that was it. That started MCing, because on the market, so I could always stand up and spiel and do whatever, selling goods. So that's when I became an MC. And then after we'd been going for 4 or 5 years, my mate said, how much we pay for a ring? And I said, oh, Christ, I don't know what it was at the time, but I told him. And he said, well, why don't we buy one? I said, who's going to look after that? He said, you can. You've got a fruit warehouse. He said, you've got all your fruit in a warehouse. You can find somewhere in there to store a ring. So that was it. I had to put a ring up. So I was working with Ron Gray, who was my matchmaker at the time, and he started doing 1 or 2 little dinner shows and said, come and do them for me with that ring of yours. So I said, okay. Next thing I know, Bob Paget from Frank Warren's office rings up and says, Ron Gray tells me you've got a ring. You don't want to take it down to Cardiff for us, do you? So I done a deal with him, and down we went to Cardiff. He said, and they tell me you're a competent MC, you better MC the show as well. So that was it. So that's how I started with Frank. We go down and do the show, did the ring up, all looked nice, tidy, because when you're in the fruit trade and you're a greengrocer, you've got to have the stall looking absolutely immaculate. What the eye sees is what you buy. So therefore it's got to be pleasing on the eye. And I did the same with rings, and I made them look good. And Bob Paget come up to me, he said, Christ, he said, that ring looks good, you're doing all their shows now. So that was it, I was in there. Frank then did a co-promotion, early 89, I suppose, with Barry at York Hall. Did the ring there, Barry come up and said, God, that's a nice ring. He said, you better do more shows. So there you go, that was that one. Then along comes Mickey Duff, and then along comes Frank Maloney, and, Kelly Maloney. And all the others, and it just followed on, and that was it,
Back in 1988, how much would it have cost to have got, you said, a ring to Cardiff? That was your first one, yeah? How much did that cost them to pay you to get that ring over to Cardiff? Not what you were doing with an MC, just the ring bit.
Yeah, just the ring bit. Most probably 200 quid in it then, in 88. I suppose that's what it was when we started. And it's one of the things that hasn't gone up that fantastic much. Small hall shows now, they just don't want to pay. That's why I don't do them anymore. Do television, get everything looking good, and we've extended it from just doing the rings that now we manufacture. In 1996, Warren rang me up one Friday afternoon, and he said, Mike, we've just pulled a sponsor for a NAS fight. He said, I want this, and this. And I went to the people who were making it for me Friday afternoon and said, I need this, make it. And I said, yeah, we'll do it Monday morning. I said, no, I need it now. He said, it's 20 to 4, we close at 4 o'clock on a Friday. I said, not today, you don't. I'll pay the girls to stop. So I paid for the girls to stop. They did all the corner pads and Toblerones and everything for me. And I went home and I said to my lad, I said, we've got to start doing this ourselves. So in 1996, we started our own sign business to cope with boxing. Boxing only took up a couple of hours a week. So the other 38 hours, a bloke I employed to help us do it, he got on the phone and started selling. Before I know where we are, we're into vehicle liveries, shop fronts, and goodness knows what. And we still are. I employ 6 fitters, and they're out all day, every day, fitting vehicles and goodness knows what. But we manufacture everything in boxing now. All the canvases, all the rope covers, everything are manufactured and made by ourselves, which is now become a very, very big business. We do everything for over here. We do everything. We send to America, we send to Germany, we send to Denmark, we send all over Europe. I've even sent to Australia, canvases. So we're most probably making 10 canvases a week sign written canvases. And the good thing about it is I've got a very short lead time because it's my own company. Someone can come to me desperate. And I've had it happen before now on a Thursday afternoon for a show on a Saturday on television. And we've produced a canvas and sign written it and all done, ready for Saturday. So that's the other side of the business. That's now turns over a couple of £1 million a year just manufacturing stuff.
Mike, I think everyone in boxing who does know you and what you do are sometimes kind of amazed and can't quite figure out how you do physically everything that you do. But with no disrespect, at the age you're at, Mike, have you never thought to take a backward step? Because you could easily have, like, a team of people out there. You could be sitting at home and just telling everyone what to do and delegating, but that's never going to be your thing, is it?
No. Listen, when you build something up, and you build it up to what it is now, where we're doing all the... don't forget, I've done every television show since everything on Sky, BT, whatever, since 1990. And when you built it up to that and you've got it absolutely working perfect, you just can't take a step back. You've got to have your finger on the pulse all the while. Whereas otherwise, people haven't got the same interest. If you employ people, they haven't got the same interest as you, and they don't do the job as well as you do. So, and therefore, then your reputation starts to slip, and you can't do that. Now, I've got a grandson now who I've brought into the business. He's 19. He's a bit young, but he's learning. And eventually, he will run the business because Simon is busy running the sign company now. Does boxing when I want him to. Still goes and does UFC cages around the world. He's off to Macau next week, I think, to do one for them. And then they're out here in Saudi in February, and he still goes and does those. But otherwise, he's running the sign business for us and the manufacturing side of it. So, you know, I just keep going, and it gives me something to do. I lost my wife 5 years ago, and rather than sit around moping and doing whatever, I work every day, and it keeps you active and keeps your mind going and what have you, you know. So I don't intend taking a step back yet.
Yeah, I did know about your wife, and obviously sorry to hear that back then, Mike. Have you ever had a significant period of time off? Have you ever had, like, say, 2 months off, ever, while you've been doing boxing?
No.
Never? You've never taken, like, even a month off?
Yes, I always used to go on a cruise with the wife after Christmas. Yeah. We always have Christmas at home, and then we go off on a cruise for 2-3 weeks, right? Or whatever. But because of the demand of boxing, you've got to be back. We always used to have to start shows again middle of January. TV always wanted it then. And because I was an MC as well, and I was Warren's MC for 12 years, I'd always got to be back for that first show. So we had a couple of weeks and that was it. And that's the culture you get into of doing that all the while. But now January is a quiet month, so I take it a little bit easier. But there's always the bookwork to catch up on and all the rest of it. Not that I do it that much. I've got 2 girls in accounts that do all that, what have you, but there's still a hell of a lot of paperwork to do. And so, as soon as there's not boxing, believe you me, I'm in the office doing paperwork and sorting things out, and, you know.
Do you not ever worry about burning yourself out?
At my age, if I burn myself out, I'd like, you know, so I say to people, live every day as if it was your last, and one day you'll be right. And that's what I'll do. And if I die tomorrow, I ain't going to worry about the business then. It's going to be someone else's worry. But all the while I'm alive, I'm worried about it. And I'll keep doing what I've got to do and try and do it right.
Listening to you talk about kind of your days in farming, your days as a greengrocer, and your last however many years, decades now in boxing, would you say that you've become obsessed with what you do in work-wise? Is that a right term to use with you, obsessed?
Yeah, you become a workaholic, don't you? You know, and you're very committed. It's one of those things that I've always said to to Barry about. You know, he's got exactly the same ethic that he works, and Frank does, because we're of that era. We were born in that era, and it was hard through the 50s and 60s, and people learned to work. And everybody worked. After the war, everybody had to learn to work and rebuild the country. And I don't want to get into politics or anything like that, but perhaps that's one of the problems in the country nowadays, that people don't want to work. But I learned to work as I say, the same as they did, because we came from that era when people had to work and learned to work.
Do you think, and probably difficult to answer, in, say, 20, 30 years' time, where people are of your age in 20, 30 years' time, do you think that there will be a batch of people from this country that are like you, are like Frank, are like Barry, those people that you mentioned, especially in sport? Do you think that there will be those kind of, say characters, but those kind of people that are built that way?
Entrepreneurs. Yeah, there'll always be people like that, but they're I won't say they're going to be few and far between. They're not. There's going to be a lot there, but there's not as many as there could be. You know, if people work and put their backs into it, it pays your rewards, and that's what you learn to do. And there's a wealth to be earned out there if you go and do it. But you've got to be prepared to work and dedicate yourself. Dedication, that's what it's about. Which I've become to the sport, the same as you have to, interviewing people and interviewing boxers. I mean, you travel around the world, you do whatever you've got to do to make it work, because it was your company. You're in a fortunate position now where you employ 2 or 3 people to go, or half a dozen people to go and do it. But you've been through that, and you don't take a step back. You're still there all the while, the same as I am, because it's your passion. You've built it. You don't want to see it slip back at all, so you're there pushing it.
Yeah, I think in reference to what you're talking about, for myself, I started it when I was 29. I'm 43 now. So am I as active now as, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago? My life's changed a bit. I've got a child now, etc. Yeah. But I kind of agree with what you say, and I see what you're saying when you say that sometimes if you want something doing, to go and do it yourself. And I've got a great team of people around me. I've got great boys that work for me, and my backroom staff are brilliant. But sometimes I feel like every week I need to be at a show. I need to be on a fight week every week. Have I had a week off? Yes. Have I been at every single show I could have? Probably not. But every week something is missing from me if I'm not actively at a fight week.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. If I'm not there, I've got a good team of lads. I've got lads from Liverpool, I've got lads from Evesham, you know, and they're all good lads, and they've learned it and they do it right. But when I go to a show, if yesterday, classic example, I've gone off here to look at another warehouse to use, because the one that we're using as cellars at the moment, they're vacating. So we went and looked at another way, and I left my lads to build the ring. Yes, they did it, but when I got there, I saw 1 or 2 little things that I had to tweak myself to just make it that little bit extra and what have you. You know, don't decry them, they did a good job. They really did. But it wasn't it hadn't got the Mike Goodall touch.
What's the worst thing? What's the worst situation you've been involved with in the ring? What, like, is a borderline, not a disaster, but you know what I mean?
The worst thing in the ring is when we've had a boxer injured, brain hemorrhage or whatever, you know. I've been there with so many times. I mean, Michael Watson, I was there then. Spencer Oliver, I was there then. You know, and I've been to most of them that have had brain trouble, and that is a sad part of boxing that I don't like, and it's something I'm very, very involved in. with Dr. Scott, the medical officer from Britain, making sure that boxers have the right not treatment. They are inspected properly after fights and what have you. Because I'm at so many shows, I see how doctors perform, and if it's not right, I know, and I tell Neil Scott, and he sorts it out, and he's busy trying to teach people, that it's got to be right. And that's one of the sad things for me, that these guys every week, they climb up those steps and they put their life on the line. And unfortunately, it's happened where one or two isn't. I mean, one of the worst ones was when I was MCing, and it was on Sky, James Murray in Glasgow, and the lad died in the ring. That's so sad. And it's one of the things that I'm so aware of, boxer safety. It's got to be right. That's why we use the underlay that we've got. And I went to the boxing board and said, some of the rings that we have are not right, that they're not using the right underlay, and they went, we've got to use the right stuff, because if you get knocked out and hit your head on a hard surface, what are you going to do? It could quite easily cause a brain hemorrhage, and you've got to think of that. And boxer safety for me is paramount.
I think, what you're saying there in reference to, aside from the actual what happens in the ring between two fighters, the gloves, the wraps, and the ring are very kind of fundamental in that whole safety process.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm not particularly keen on at the moment is the amount of wrap that they use. In the old days, they used to only be able to use 11 foot and 4 inches, I think it was, of bandage, and you could only use so much zinc oxide tape on there. Now they make all these pads and everything. Gloves are well padded. You can hit something and break a hole in the wall and not hurt your hand. In the old days, when there used to be 6-ounce gloves and they weren't very well padded, you broke your hand before you broke someone's head. Now, these things they're so well padded, you can knock hell out of someone and unfortunately do a lot of damage before you can even feel it yourself. But there you go, that's just one of my little quirks about safety.
How many people have ever moaned about your rings?
Oh, I've had one or two. Of course, I had Bibble's lot last time out here. They come out and measured the bloody thing because they thought it was small. It wasn't. It was to the inch, 20 foot inside the rope.
Is that not really to do with the ring and stuff? Is that all tactical? Because we've seen that. Is that all like to cause a little bit of unrest?
Well, I don't know. At times, I mean, I remember when Fury fought White at Wembley. Lennox Lewis got in the ring, and he happened to say, this ring looks small. And within 15 minutes, I must have had at least 30 calls from lawyers, managers, all the rest of it, to say, what's up with this ring? John Fury came out and said, I know it ain't, Mike. He said, but I've got to check it. He said, just to keep Tyson happy. But, you don't do that. It's people just say silly things, and it just, you're putting a spark in a box of fireworks.
You would have done the ring for when Fury fought Klitschko in Dusseldorf.
No.
You didn't do that one?
No.
There was something about that. I can't remember exactly what it was.
The underlay was very thick. It was like 2 inches it was 4 inches of sponge rubber. And the first thing that happened when they saw it on the day, Tyson was being trained by Peter then. Yeah. Peter picked up the phone to me and said, Mike, this underlay is absolutely useless. What do I do? I said, get hold of the commission, tell him it's dangerous. He could twist an ankle or what have you. Yeah. And that's what he did, and they had to change it. Yeah. But obviously, Klitschko, they were tactical. Klitschko had been training on that for months, knowing that when Fury got on it, he's going to have a problem keeping his balance. But they knew how to handle it. It was tactical.
Yeah, I was in Dusseldorf, and I remember that situation was going around. I wasn't sure who put the ring in. That's why I asked if it was you.
No, it was a German. It was one of the Germans out there that did it. They got companies over there that they use. So we just do mainly UK. They've done a bit in France, Monaco for Barry Hearn, and then this last 12 months, Saudi Arabia, big store.
Just going back to the start of this conversation, which I didn't know that you'd had 15 fights. Were they 15 amateur fights that you had?
It was just
Schoolboy?
Yeah, just schoolboy stuff, you know.
Could you fight though, Mike?
I'd like to think I did in the playground. When I got in the boxing ring, I found it was a different thing. When you come under Queensbury rules, it's a little bit different. So, no, I couldn't.
You had 15 goes at something. I mean, but it never really pursued you to take it any further.
No, as I say, I found out from a very early age it bloody hurts, and that was it. But I've also had that little bit of interest there. As I say, when we went into business and it had the opportunity, we took it. And it's sport I love, and I think there's the discipline in it for kids now. We need to really concentrate on that. I see Matchroom are doing something now which is great, you know. The way the kids are on the streets and knives and all the rest of it. Christ, come on, let's get as many as we can into gyms and discipline down, and a bit of self-respect and self-discipline. That's what we need to be doing.
You would have seen almost generations of kids, kind of, some make it, but not a lot make it into boxing. Some try it, but the gym is a great place to eliminate a lot of that. Whether you make it as a professional or an amateur boxer or not, the gym is a good starting place to try and eradicate some of that.
Yes, it is. You know, it becomes a community, doesn't it? And it's something that you go to and you train every day, and you make your own friends there, and it disciplines. It's self-discipline, and that's what you got to do. The one thing that boxing does is discipline people, because you've got to train the same amount every day, and you've got you do 3 minutes in a round or 2 minutes in a round and a break, and you do whatever. And if you're doing circuit training, you're doing exactly the same thing. And when you do it in the bag or whatever, it's you're disciplining yourself to do that. And it's something that we've got to channel kids towards as much. I was fortunate. When I was at school, we were boxing at school. Then we went through this period where there was no boxing at school because it's a violent sport and all the rest of it. And that's where it's fallen down, that it wasn't there for the kids. So what do they go and do? They go out and do whatever they've got to do on the street and nick in or, living a bad life. And I'm sure if that had been kept on at school, it would have given a lot of kids something to do and focus at. And sport's not what it was when I was at school. Christ, it was football, it was rugby, it was cricket, it was everything. It don't happen now. And they've got to get back to that. They've got to occupy kids' minds.
Okay, well listen, Mike, much appreciate your time. I've been educated today because there's a lot of stuff you spoke about, even though I've known you for 14 years or whatever. There's a lot of stuff that I didn't know. So, what's the next goal for you, Mike? Get the telegram from the king?
Shouldn't think so. That's not what you know, it's who you know. But, no, there you go. I've had a good life at it. I've enjoyed it. And we'll just keep soldiering on and do whatever we've got to do. Very honoured to have been, to have been made in the Hall of Fame, British Hall of Fame and all the rest of it, and have received all the services to boxing awards from boxing writers, from the boxing board, from everybody, That's been great honour. But no, we just keep soldiering on and doing whatever for the sport. I just wondering what sort of hole it's going to leave when it all ends, when I finish.
You ain't going anywhere. Not anytime soon. Anyway, Mr. Goodall, much appreciate your time, giving me your time. But yeah, it was good to do this because, like I said, it's usually after a situation that's occurred. I'm like, let's get Goodall's reaction to this. But it's good to get a little bit. Like I said, some people will know this and some people won't. So, yes, appreciate your time, Mr. Goodall.
Thank you very much indeed, Kugan. Pleasure.
This has been Kugan Cassius for Raw Podcast with Mike Goodall. Make sure you comment, like and subscribe, and we will see you next week. Thank you.